It's a beautiful Wednesday morning. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily and happy celebrations to our Muslim brothers. I'm Neo Taigbe.
Yes, indeed.
Channels Television wishes you a happy Eid al-Maulud.
On the issue of foreign exchange rates, which everybody's been talking about, and naturally is very worrisome to everybody, very, very worrisome. It goes without saying, quite frankly, that for the sort of country we want, we do need to have an exchange rate that is stable. And quite frankly, there are short and medium-term measures, but I would say something about the short-term measures because that really is what bothers most people today, understandably. Number one, it is that of what I would term an operational issue. Right now, you have a situation where, and we all know this, we can argue about the figures, the numbers, but we are aware that there are unsettled obligations by the central bank. We are aware there are unsettled obligations. Whether it's 4 billion, 5 billion, 7 billion, I don't know. But definitely the immediate priority will be to be able to verify the authenticity and the extent of what is owed. And then, of course, once we do that, we need to promptly find a way to take care of that. Number two, apart from the operational, there's one that is more system-related. And that involves ensuring that we come up with rules that are open, that are transparent, and that any of the players in that business understands. Those that want to do business in Nigeria, they want to see that the coast is clear. And if they don't, they will continue to hold on to their money. So that's something that I want to share with you so that you will understand that this is the short-term measures are ones that will be very, very important to us, myself and the team. Once we get in, it's something we will address right away.
With the confirmation of the governor of CBN and his deputies, all eyes are on them now about fixing the economy. So let's identify some KPIs for consideration, having heard his response, his initial address and response to some questions put to him by the National Assembly. Do you think he has what it takes to address the issues in the immediate, that's in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term? Let's have conversations around this, as you've seen there, with Mr. Muda Yusuf. He's founder, no, that should be Dr. Muda Yusuf, right?
It doesn't matter.
He's founder and CEO of Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, CPPE. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, and thank you. Good morning, Bukara.
First impressions.
Yeah.
First impressions from that screening and the comments that the new CBN governor made. What are your thoughts?
Well, very impressive. His responses to the questions. was very, very impressive. And I like the fact that he identified some of the critical issues that we had contended with in the Central Bank of Nigeria. And I think the biggest of the issues were corporate governance issues, because he laid a lot of emphasis on issues of compliance. In addition to the fundamental structural problems that we have in the economy, the situation was compounded by the very weak corporate governance that we had in the central bank and the absence of compliance. Because how else will you explain a situation where we had a central bank that did not publish accounts for close to 6 years? And you know how strategic the central bank is to the economy. You know, how do you explain a situation where you had all manner of issues around our foreign exchange markets? Because if you talk to any operator in the economy, they will tell you how bad things were. Then how come we found ourselves in a situation where the central bank was giving ways and means far, far above what the statutory limits are? The statutory limits, according to the CBN Act, is 5% of the revenue of the previous year. Ways and means is the kind of credit or advance or overdraft that the CBN gives to government to fill financing gaps. That is what it means. And there is a statutory provision limit of 5%. What we had under the previous dispensation was higher, 70, 80%. So all of these things created very serious problem and compounded the situation. Then just one more thing. Then there are these encumbrances on our reserves. In fact, that is the most challenging of the problems we have. All the analysis we have been making was based on the fact that our reserves was well above 30 billion US dollars. It just came to the open that the situation was much worse than that. And that is what has complicated matters, even as we speak.
I'm not even sure that, because the new CBN governor also said that it's when they get into office that they'll be able to look at the books and justify whether or not those things are the way they are. But the issues you are raising about the previous administration at the CBN was also inferred in the comments of the president of the Senate. And I'm sure you heard him make quite a number of references to it. You talked about the corporate governance issues, which was a direct responsibility of the governor of the central bank. You talked about the ways and means, which is a direct, responsibility of the governor of the central bank. And the president of the Senate also cited the situation where a sitting governor of the central bank is veering into politics while still in office. It sounds to me, and maybe we should begin from there, that we pay so much attention to the individual that no one is able to take on that individual, or the system is not strong enough to push out or to check the behavior or activities of the governor of the central bank. That's a little concerning, don't you think? Because a situation where those ways and means, we had a National Assembly, the governor of the central bank was veering into politics, everyone, saw what was happening, and it would seem like no one was able to do anything. Is there a way to ensure that such doesn't happen? The CBN, the president of the Senate, was saying it rather, seemingly jocularly. Are you going to go into politics as well? But who is supposed to check the excesses or the exuberances of the governor of the central bank to the point that we don't have to get to the point where we're saying you are spending more than 65% above what you're supposed to spend in terms of ways and means?
You see, these are reflections of institutional weaknesses. Because normally, if you look at the laws and all the structures in place, there are structures to ensure controls. Because just as some people say, trust is good, but controls are better. there are systems in place to ensure controls. Now, the Senate President was also in the National Assembly up until before he became, and he was there when all of these things were also happening. We had a committee that is supposed to exercise oversight over the central bank, both in the Senate and in the House of Reps. What were they doing? Because one of the biggest functions of the National Assembly is to ensure checks and balances. How can you, as a committee of the National Assembly that is supposed to exercise oversight over such a critical institution, sat there and all these infractions were happening?
So you think they're also culpable?
They were compromised and culpable. And that is why in this system, it is good for there to be consequences.
Sorry, on that same issue, sorry, Bukola, sorry. On that same issue, as you said, we have the House Committee, we have the Senate Committee. Are you saying both of them are culpable?
Of course. How else will you explain this?
But Dr. Yusuf,
You were there for how many years? And all of these things were happening? And none of them had the courage to stand up.
But
even members of the National Assembly, how many of them stood up to challenge these things? Apart from those in the committees. The whole system was compromised.
But on that same issue, it was addressed by the Senate President when he, told the CBN governor frontally before his confirmation, that, when you get officer, you're going to forget that there is a parliament, and would you shun calls or invitations to the National Assembly to answer questions, as was reminiscent of the past. So wasn't that taken care of in that interaction yesterday?
No. We are talking about consequence management. Look at the damage that has been done. What did they do when those things were happening? Because they had the powers. We are talking of a National Assembly that has the power to even remove the president. That is how powerful they are.
But what Bukola is saying is that the man was invited, but according to the president of the Senate, he didn't.
He didn't show. Then what did they do?
That's the past leadership.
What did they do? We are talking of a national that can impeach the president himself. How can an appointee of the president just disrespect them with such impunity? The point I'm making is that the whole system was compromised. That is why I'm saying that they're also culpable. The system was compromised because when you compromise any institution, you weaken your authority. Compromise weakens the authority. You don't have the moral authority to say anything to the man when you have been compromised. That is my own understanding of the situation.
But was that also taken care of, when members of the Senate were asking about the matter of corporate governance, where the boss doubles also as the chairman of the board? And was his response that, this is how it is done according to international practice? Was this satisfactory enough? And, going forward, perhaps if the law establishing the CBN were to be reviewed and that was to be separate, would it, would the separation of that office, would it serve to check the excesses of anyone that heads the Apex Bank in the future?
I think so. Because sometimes you have to situate your policies and your regulations within the context of your own environment. We have seen that too much powers sometimes can pose a risk to a system. Before now, we used to have, even in the banking system, where the MD will also double as the chairman of the bank. But because of all these corporate governance issues, the CBN had to come up with a regulation that you cannot be chairman and be MD at the same time. Now, if you have a level-headed person or somebody who has the right kind of courage to manage the position, it may not matter. But you cannot guarantee who will be there tomorrow. So when you are the CBN governor and you are the chairman of the board, it's extremely difficult within that system to have proper checks and balances. Given our recent experience, it may not happen under this dispensation, but you make rules to guard against a situation where you have somebody who will abuse the position. That is why the structures have to be there, both within the CBN and even outside the CBN.
But do you think the law insulates the CBN governor enough from incursion by political interests?
Of course, to the extent that you cannot remove the CBN governor unless with the consent of the National Assembly, although there are issues around that now. Because people talk about whether suspension is removal or something like that. That has not been finally settled, by the judiciary. I think Sanusi attempted to do it, but he abandoned it halfway.
But why was that not the case during the last administration when we had the Naira redesign policy where fingers were pointed at, members of the presidency of the last administration and then his purported incursion into politics? That's the former CBN governor. Well,
it's a function of how people have the courage to also speak truth to power. Under the Buhari administration, there was this imperial disposition that wherever the president stands, nobody there goes to challenge his position. And the previous governor was able to do that because he had the backing of the president from all we saw. And once he had that, he was able to intimidate everybody, even including the National Assembly. So that was why they could not do anything. So for me, the National Assembly has not done well at all at that time. I mean, look at the way the Naira redesign went. The man called the bluff of everybody, almost even including the Supreme Court.
Dr. Yusuf, let's make some progress, because now that we have a new dispensation on our hands, one of the things that the new CBN governor said is that if they are confirmed, the immediate plan is to stabilize the Naira. The immediate plan to stabilize the Naira will be for the Apex Bank to settle some financial obligations and make what they call transparent rules. First of all, there are those who are wondering what that means. And secondly, how significant do you think that would be in the immediate?
No, that's very significant. Because you know how sensitive the economy is to foreign exchange issues. This economy is highly sensitive to developments in the foreign exchange market. Unfortunately so. Because the level of import dependence is extremely high. So managing the forex environment is the topmost priority for him. And what we're experiencing now, and just in line with what he said, is almost a total collapse of confidence. And once confidence collapses in any system, the whole thing will spin out of control. That is why we are seeing the kind of, very serious speculative activities now. Both those who need the dollar for business, those who don't need the dollar, those who just want to convert them, all of them are rushing now to buy foreign exchange. And that's a major issue. Look at where it has gone. So what he said is right. We need to move very quickly to restore confidence. But the bigger challenge is, where is he going to get the supply?
Absolutely.
To deal with that.
Can he achieve that without the federal government's definite support of plugging the loopholes in crude oil theft?
Well, that is part of it. But the best he can do as a central bank is to look at the policies that are existing and remove barriers to inflows, remittances, and other foreign inflows into the economy. And he said it repeatedly, that he will have to work in collaboration with the fiscal authorities to achieve most of these things. Because the challenge is both policy-related and also structural related. And some of those things will take some time, because we are talking of a backlog of maybe $6 billion, $10 billion. It will take time
and maybe
to clear that. And if you don't clear the backlog, you cannot properly restore confidence in the system.
I know my colleague in Abuja has more questions for you, but just before we go to Abuja, the promise of, doubling the growth rate and achieving a $1 trillion economy in the next 8 years. How realistic is it? Is it okay to give highfalutin promises that, like most administrations and their representatives give, and 6, 7 years down the line, it's still eluding the country?
Well, 8 years. 8 years is a long time if we really get things right. Because this economy has the fundamentals to deliver on that kind of promise. I say that because we have the resources and we have the people. The biggest obstacle to the economy is those in governance. Once we're able to fix that, and once he's able to do some of the things he said, and once those in the economic team are also able to do the right things, we have the entrepreneurs. We have those who can create the wealth to take us to that point in 8 years. I believe it's something. And we have the resources anyway. Most of our resources are being suboptimally utilized. We are not capturing value the way we should capture value. It's feasible if we do the right things.
Absolutely. Nyota.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Dr. Yusuf, my colleagues have asked a lot of questions, but let's look at this matter of the inflation rate. I know he talked, the new CBN governor talked about what he's going to do, or the exchange rate. He's talked about settling on unsettled obligations and rules that are transparent, putting out rules that are transparent, that even the investors will clearly see that this is what we're doing. Again, that will work. But see what the IMF was talking about. IMF put out, or giving hints on how to avoid a debt crisis, says policy changes are more likely to yield tangible results if the fiscal institutions are strong and efficient. So we have a new CBN governor who has a reputation. And he has talked about some of the things he's going to do, the low-hanging fruits that he's going to handle. The question is, being a monetary policy organization and what they're supposed to do, are the fiscal institutions strong enough to handle what he's coming up with?
Well, it's time that will tell, because it's still early days. But what I do know is that, unlike what we had under the previous dispensation, there's likely to be better coordination under the current dispensation, given the background of both the finance minister and, of course, the Central Bank of Nigeria. Given their background, given where they are coming from, given their credentials, I expect that there will be better coordination. If you have a much better coordination, then a lot of these macroeconomic challenges will be easier to deal with. Unlike what we had in the previous dispensation, there was really no, that chemistry was not there under the present dispensation. There was a whole lot of silo mentality or silo approach. People were operating in silos and all of that. There was all manner of territorial, sensibilities under that administration. But from some of the documents that we have seen, there's even a structure to ensure policy coordination. And that is why we have a coordinating minister for the economy, not just a finance minister. So from that point of view, I think that we should expect a better synergy and collaboration between those key institutions. But when you talk about inflation, you see, apart from the point that the CBN governor made about money supply, and that was also a very, very important point he made, the impact of money supply and the impact of monetization of deficit on inflation, which he has promised to check. Apart from that, practically all the key instruments of fighting inflation have almost been exhausted by the central bank. The cash reserve requirement currently is 32.5%. It's one of the highest that you can have globally. And the implication of that is that for every 100 million naira deposits that gets into the banking system, 32.5 million is sterilized with the Central Bank of Nigeria. And if you talk to those who are operators in the sector, the percentage is even much higher than that. Some of them have a CRR of almost 50%. Then you have the MPR, which is already at 18.5% or so. So these things are already extremely high. So that is why some of us are saying that the bigger issue with inflation has to do with the structural issues, creating the environment to boost the supply side of the economy, to increase productivity in the economy, and on the monetary side, to have some controls over the rate at which the CBN is printing money or the rate at which the CBN is financing deficits. I think for inflation to be tackled, those two sides, both the fiscal and monetary, have very big role to play. But more importantly, the fiscal side.
So that part about increasing the productivity of the economy, how would that work, seeing that the interest rates are so high? You talked about the deposit rates as it is, 32% already. That pushing on to the interest rates, how would that, if the manufacturers and those running the industries cannot have access to finance, and when they do have it, the rates are so high up there, how would that affect their productivity?
Well, interest rates is an issue, but there are bigger issues affecting productivity. Right now, diesel price is crossing 1,000 naira per liter. You can imagine the implication of that for productivity. In an economy where in the last 1 or 2 months, we have been seeing frequent collapse of the national grid. Imagine the implication of that for the cost of production. Some businesses are already even packing up. Because how do you deal with a situation where you have very serious challenge with the cost of energy, and you have very serious challenge with foreign exchange? Not many businesses can survive that for long. And some of them have even suspended operations. Many of them are running at a loss as we speak. They're just operating their businesses just to be able to generate some cash flow, because they cannot pass on all the costs to their customers. Purchasing power is weak. Disposable income is very low. So many businesses are in a quandary. Yes, interest rate is something that we need to deal with. Although if we're able to tackle inflation, that may help with reduction in interest rates. But there are bigger issues, more than that. Because energy issue is a big issue. Foreign exchange issue is even a bigger issue. So these are some of the macroeconomic things I think that needed to be tackled, in addition to seeing what we can do about the issue of the cost of fund.
In tackling these macroeconomic issues, see some of the things that he put out. He said, these are all evidences you put out. It says evidence-based monetary policies. That's what he's going to be pursuing. So the policies will be based on evidence. But he said, at least 50% of inflation has been as a result of money supply and deficit financing. So he will work with the fiscal institutions to manage the deficit financing matter of things. But the low-hanging fruit in this area of inflation, managing the inflation situation, even as the experts have said, this is the area he needs to pursue. What would you be advising that be done immediately? Because the manufacturers are crying, the consumers are crying because they are bearing the brunt of all of these things. And even the government is beginning to cry because of what all the other parts of the society are going through. So what would be the things that you think the institution should handle immediately?
Well, there is no quick fix to this, given the key drivers of inflation.
The quick fix?
There is no quick fix. But in terms of some quick responses, because in his interaction with the National Assembly, with the Senate, he did talk about the issue of money supply, which you also alluded to. Of course, that can be dealt with as quickly as possible, but it is not likely that you get immediate results. But what I would suggest is that we need to look at our fiscal policy instruments, particularly in the area of import duty, some taxes and things like that, because we are dealing with a situation where for many of the products, particularly for those in production, import duties that they pay are still very high. So when you have high import duty and you have a very weak exchange rate, it's a double whammy. On top of that, you have high energy cost. So if you cannot control the energy cost because these are, external variables, something that are external to our environment, at least we can control our import duty. Import duty on critical raw materials, import duty on critical inputs that people are using for production. I think that is one quick thing that we need to do. Unfortunately, I've not heard so much about using the import duty or the tariff or trade policy instruments to deal with the current challenges. I think we need to look more in that direction. We should not be too focused on generating revenue to the extent that we go and suffocate the system. You should create a breather, especially for those in production. If you cannot bring down immediately the exchange rate, at least you can bring down the import duty and some of the taxes for some critical components of the economy. I think that is one thing that can be done immediately, in addition to, of course, the medium to long-term issues of trying to reduce money supply, curbing insecurity, ensuring that electricity supply and all of that.
Dr. Yusuf, when you say reducing money supply, then there's the other bit about domestic, mobilizing domestic revenue. Let's put the two and two together. If we're going by the IMF's recommendation of saying mobilizing domestic revenue is less detrimental to the growth of a nation's economy, and then you're talking about reducing money supply, can we work out a balance here? That, again, of course, there are no quick fixes, but there are some quick responses that can be done. So we know that the local debt, as it is right now, is very high up there. But we're still talking about how to mobilize funds for the manufacturing industry. And you're talking about the things that are already too high and need to be brought down. So if we're going by the IMF's recommendation of mobilizing domestic finances, yet you're saying we should cut down the supply of money. Please, let's work out a balance. How do we balance things out here?
No, that's a distinction between revenue and money supply. They are different things.
Okay, please clear that up.
Yes, they are different things. Revenue is about issues of taxation and also non-tax revenue, how you can generate revenue from those who are operators in the economy by way of taxation. Money supply, that especially the component that the CBN governor referred to, is this idea of printing money. The Ways and Means that was recently securitized reached a level of almost about 23 trillion before it was securitized. That is huge liquidity. That's huge pumping of money into the system. These are monies. These are inflows into the economy that you cannot tie to any productivity or economic activity within the economy. So it is that kind of money that is injurious to the economy, and that is the kind of thing that we need to cut down. The normal taxes are things that are derived from normal economic activities. So that is the difference. The money supply, especially the financing of deficit by the CBN, is very, very injurious and detrimental to the economy. It creates challenges for inflation, it creates challenges for exchange rates. And I think the CBN governor emphasized that very well during his interaction.
Dr. Yusuf, we'll take a moment and go on a quick break. When we come back, that matter of mobilizing domestic revenue, especially for the manufacturing industry, and to quick-sack the economy, we'll look at that when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
Professor Patrick Lumumba. Professor Patrick Lumumba is a Kenyan lawyer and activist. He is a former director of the Kenyan School of Law and served as the director of the Kenyan Anti-Corruption Commission from July 2010 to August 2011. He is a notable Pan-Africanist and has delivered several speeches alluding to or about African solutions to African problems. Professor Patrick Lumumba will be speaking at the platform. Date is Monday, 2nd of October 2023. Time 9 a.m. Venue is the Covenant Place, Igomo, right beside the National Theatre. See you there. This event will be broadcast live on Channels Television. The platform is powered by the Covenant Nation.
Southwood. Fine furnishings for your home and office. Southwood is a Nigerian company dedicated to improving the quality of workplaces and homes. Our space planning and craftsmanship allows you to create a highly customized and comfortable office environment for hardworking and busy executives. Southwood solutions are perfect for today's flexible work cultures. Teamwork, transparency, collaboration. A well-designed and comfortable work environment is proven to increase productivity and morale. Our elegant home furnishings provide the ultimate in comfort and quality. Southwood, furnishings that shape your world. Visit us today at southwoodnigeria.com. Email us at furniture@southwoodnigeria.com or call 0700 Furniture.
The Duchess International Hospital caters to every aspect of the family's health needs. A one-stop shop for maternity and child health services, emergency medicine and critical care, medical and surgical subspecialties, dental and eye care, and a range of other subspecialties and services, all available at a single location right here in the heart of Ikeja. And it really doesn't matter if you're paying out of pocket using your HMO or private insurance. We focus completely on providing that world-class affordable healthcare for all the family at all times.
On October the 1st, 2023, Nigeria will be over 23,000 days, 756 months, 63 years as a sovereign nation. Watch Channels Television as it brings you Independence Day special with the theme Empowering Tomorrow, a new vision for Nigeria, with seasoned analysts, erudite scholars, and policymakers to blaze a new trail.
Vision for the economy, not about the 10 or 4 years, but a vision that talks about what you want to make of this economy in the next 10 years, which means you must look beyond your own time in the office.
If we're weighing down the military on all sorts of internal issues that we're having, who is going to solve this issue? We need to start empowering all the other civil policing agencies we have.
Join us on Sunday, October the 1st, 2023, 7 to 9 a.m. to dissect the president's speech. Then Sunday Politics, 7 to 9 p.m. On Monday, we return with a bang between 5 to 9 p.m. for a town hall, only on Channels Television, a network built on trust.
Channels Television wishes you a happy Eid al-Maulud.
Welcome back. Our closing moments with Dr. Muda Yusuf, founder, CEO of Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. Dr. Yusuf, that matter of mobilizing domestic debt. I know that on the floor of the Senate, one of the senators was advising the new CBN governor to take advantage of the borrowing gap. Debt to GDP right now stands at about 30%. Say you could see harness up to 70%. But how do we go about mobilizing revenue within local revenue, domestic revenue, without adding too much of a burden on our debt stock?
Well, I think the president has started well with the Taiwo Oyedele committee that was set up. They have a clear roadmap as to how to achieve revenue optimization. So, I mean, they are talking about harmonizing collection of revenue, for instance. That, for me, I think is a step in the right direction. They are talking about plugging leakages, particularly with respect to the MDAs that are generating revenue and that are not remitting what they should remit. I think that, for me, too, is also good. Then some of the reforms that have taken place, particularly the forex exchange rates convergence and the fuel subsidy removal or reduction, has also, boosted revenue significantly. And evidence of that you can find in the last FAC meeting, where they had so much revenue that they had to cut back on even what was to be distributed. So these reform measures are also boosting revenue. But we need to also move quickly, to ensure that we create the right environment for those businesses that are generating the revenue for government. Because if they continue to face the challenges, particularly the kind of challenges they are facing, then the outlook for revenue may not be as bright as people expect. Because, I mean, you have to be in business to be able to pay taxes. You have to be doing well to be able to pay taxes. So all the critical issues confronting domestic businesses, I think, is something that we need to prioritize. Yes, it's good to look for foreign investors and so on, but we need a lot more focus on domestic investors and addressing their concerns. And the CBN governor also talked about the issue of stakeholder engagement. I think that is very critical. Policymakers cannot understand the economy better than those who are operators in the economy. So both the CBN and all the key ministries should regularly engage with the stakeholders so that whatever policies they are putting in place will be fit for purpose. You don't impose a policy that is not appropriate for the kind of environment in which you are. So stakeholder engagement is extremely very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just the CBN and the ministries, but also the manufacturers as well. And I noted that earlier you touched on the CBN, the new governor's resolve, to sanitize that sector by taking a look at the rules of operations. You talked about an economy where the energy sector is hugely dependent on the foreign exchange market as well, because it's also denominated in dollars. But look at this, Dr. Yusuf. On the front page of The Guardian this morning, the big story is more factories, businesses may shut down as diesel hits 1,100 naira per liter. But there's also something that it talks about, what manufacturers spent on alternative energy between 2016 and 2022. And there are huge figures here, Dr. Yusuf. So what's the potential of this alternative energy market within Nigeria? And what rules of operations would you be recommending that the federal government, through the new CBN leadership, puts in place such that manufacturers can be less dependent on these other main energy sources?
Well, I think these are essentially fiscal issues, and the government needs to respond to the issue of power supply very urgently and more fundamentally. Because if we had steady public power supply, why would people be relying on diesel for production? Why would people be relying on PMS to power their generators and all of that? So we should prioritize improvement in electricity. The government has done well. At least we have seen some policy reforms, decentralizing electricity generation, distribution, and all of that. But we need to do that a lot more quickly so that we can deliver power electricity.
There are other power sources that manufacture.
There are other power sources, but the cheapest of all, the most dependable, and given what is happening all over the world, is this public power supply. It's cheaper than diesel, it's cheaper even than gas, and it's much more environment friendly. So the government needs to do a lot more. We cannot just leave it entirely to the private sector, because power is a developmental issue. You don't leave something that is purely developmental, that is strategic to economic development, that is strategic to productivity and competitiveness. You don't leave it entirely to the private sector. So governments will have a way to also have an input and do some heavy lifting in the power sector so that the private sector can take over from there. You can see that most of the investors in that space, most of them are struggling.
Even the good number of people will say, what has been, excuse me, it was in the hands of the government before, and some sectors of it are still in the hands of government. I don't know what have we come up with. Anyway, excuse me, but that's beside the point. Just before we go, Dr. Yusuf, I want to ask this question. In the light of the previous administration's Chinese yuan naira swap, that's the perspective from which I want you to look at this. The dollar has been the global reserve currency since the 40s. And I understand that there are a number of other countries who are looking to other, reserve currencies as opposed to the dollar. Given the volume of trade between Nigeria and other countries other than the US, and by the way, it so happens that China has the largest reserve, of more than 3 trillion, in its reserves. So one wonders then, do you think Nigeria should be looking to a different reserve currency so that maybe that will, one way or the other, reduce the dollarization of the naira? Do you see that happening?
Well, it's a good idea to diversify, the way in which we keep our reserves. But what is most fundamental is to build an economy that is very productive, that is competitive, regionally and globally. Because whether you are talking of Chinese yuan, you are talking of dollar, or you are talking of euro, your capacity to earn those things depends on what you're able to produce and how competitively you're able to produce. I think those are the more fundamental issues. Of course, there are a lot of sentiments about moving away from the dollar and all of that. Our destiny is in our own hands. If we're able to have an economy that's very productive, and we'll be able to have more say as to what happens. And in any case, trade is not business that does the trade. I mean, it's not government that does trade, it's business people. So the business that will determine if you export to China or somewhere, you are going to determine which currency you want to be paid. And it depends on, again, how liquid and how reliable those currencies are.
Because when I look at the Chinese yuan to the naira, it's just over 100 naira. And then to 1,000, come on. Don't even answer that one. Dr. Muda Yusuf, founder, CEO, Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, my pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So we're back right after now to take on another conversation when we return from this break. Do stay with us.
This exercise is to train frontline security agencies, human rights stakeholders, the judiciary and state lawmakers on civil-military relations, conflict prevention, respect for human rights, and protection of civilians to better handle incidents of banditry, kidnapping, and armed robbery in the Northwest Zone. These incidents of insecurity have resulted in the death of many, displacement of thousands, and kidnap of many others, whose families pay ransom before they're released, while communities have also suffered collateral damage during military operations to nip the menace in the bud, creating mistrust.
One of the rationales for having this training is that we saw the necessity growing rise in human rights abuse in various states, seeing the various kind of conflicts and insurgencies we have in the state, we saw that there's a need to actually have civilian protection at the core of what we do. One is to actually equip the stakeholders, especially security agencies, with the right knowledge on how to actually engage civilians once they have these actually situations that occur and may arise in the state.
In Nigeria, we have many laws. We have more than enough laws. The only issue is compliance or enforcement of those laws. So whatever we are doing, we have to comply with the provisions of our laws, and that will tackle the problem.
The Zamfara state government is also not resting on its oars to end the insecurity. It is putting in place legislation to equip the military through the State House of Assembly.
Zamfara State is seriously challenged with security issues. So we are trained how to manage this security situation in the state.
The consensus here is that it is important to be careful and professional in carrying out the various responsibilities and share credible intelligence with security agencies. If Zamfara State and Nigeria must succeed in resolving all forms of security challenges bedeviling the nation.
Thank you for staying with us, and that's where we're going. The Zamfara security. We do remember that the Zamfara state government had accused the federal government of negotiating with bandits, which suggests that they are on separate pages, and this may hinder their quest to tackle the terrorist situation headlong. Our guest is Sani Abdullahi Shinkafa, who's a former chairman of the Committee on Prosecution of Armed Banditry and Related Offences in Zamfara. Thank you for joining us. You were a former chairman of a committee set up to look at how to prosecute armed banditry and other related. This matter that is coming up now, the Zamfara state government and the federal government going back and forth. First of all, Zamfara state government has said we're not negotiating with bandits. But now the government is saying the federal government is negotiating with bandits. What's going on here?
Well, you see the constitutional responsibility of any serious government is to serve people, also to provide security of lives and property. So the issue of protection of lives and properties of citizenry lies within the ambit and the functions of the federal government. Mr. President is the Commander-in-Chief of Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It is on record when the students of the Federal University Gusau were arrested, were kidnapped, and adopted by armed bandits. President gave a marching order to the military and the security agencies to rescue these kidnapped female students, which were kidnapped last week in Gusau, who are also students of the Federal University. So there are many approaches in the fight against insecurity, which comprise terrorism, armed banditry, cattle rustling, kidnapping for ransom. There is two approaches, kinetic and non-kinetic approach. So the kinetic approach is where you use total military operation in the fight against armed banditry, terrorism, and any form of criminality. Non-kinetic is where you engage traditional rulers, Fulani leaders, respected members of a society and other religious bodies, even the security committee in a locality. Because to save some collateral damage, to save costs in buying arms and ammunition, and also to bring harmony in a locality. So the state governor accusing federal government of negotiating with the bandit or negotiating with any form of criminals in the state is out of context. We should not play politics with the life of people and their properties. It is on record. The governor met with the National Security Advisor, with him and the governor of Niger State, and also Senate Committee Chairman on Security and Intelligence to discuss the way to go about restoring peace in Zamfara State. So if the office of NSA or the military or Ministry of Defense follows an approach to tackle the insecurity in Zamfara State, I think the governor will be very appreciative of that effort. Because the governor's responsibility is to govern the state and also to deliver dividend of democracy. When there's no peace, no security, all the socio-economic problems in the state will be downgraded.
So I do know that there is no governor worth his onions that will sit down and watch his house in chaos and not do anything about it. And you've said here now the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces.
Yes.
All the security apparatus sits with the federal government. So it's the federal government that will deploy, so to speak. Now, if there's a situation on ground, if he has met with all of these people you mentioned, but he's saying now that he, as a state, has said, we will not negotiate with these people. But you are coming to, that's his stance. So do you think that he doesn't want to work with the federal government to end banditry in his state?
What he was trying to say, I'm very sorry to say it, he's too economical with the truth. Because he knows, I know, you know, Nigerians know, deployment of military lies within the powers of Mr. President. It's a constitutional responsibility of Mr. President to deploy Army, Air Force, including the Navy. Because one of the constitutional responsibilities of Mr. President as a commander-in-chief of armed forces of the Federal Force of Nigeria is to protect the territorial integrity of a country at the land border, on the airspace, and on the sea. So if the governor is saying that he's not going to negotiate with the bandit, but the constitutional responsibility of the deployment of military forces lies within the powers of the governor, that is where the question arises. And he knows, I know, I'm from Zamfara State, he's from Zamfara State. I knew more than 200 kidnapped victims were released unconditionally by the bandit previous week and last month. In Birnin Magaji, in Muhaye, in part of Maradun, including in Shinkafi, where I come from. Because the terrain, the military are fighting this bandit. It is a very difficult terrain. And I have been saying time would add number that the military in Zamfara are overstretched. They are under-equipped. They are understaffed. In the whole of Zamfara State military camp, you cannot see a functional CSK armor personnel carrier vehicle to curtail this bandit. So for the governor to sit down and be accusing federal government of negotiating with the bandit, internationally, there is two ways, as I have said earlier, to fight insecurity, terrorism, kidnapping, and any form of criminality that is kinetic and non-kinetic approach.
Okay.
So if the federal government is going to use kinetic approach to curtail or to tackle insecurity, I have seen nothing the governor should condemn, because he cannot give an order to Commissioner of Police to go and attack bandits. It is from the federal government. He cannot direct DSS to go and attack bandit camp or military or air force.
Mr. Shinkafi, Nigeria is a democracy, right? It's a federation. So the states have their country, they have their powers within their particular environment. If you have your house, I don't live in your house, or you tell me there's a situation in your house, and then I go to your house to begin to try to resolve that situation here, wouldn't it be wise for me to speak with you and we work together, tidy up the situation in your house? Shouldn't that be the situation?
This situation, you see, there must be a synergy, and there must be a symbiotic relationship between the federal government, state government, and even the local government. But what I'm saying, the governor knows, and the people of Zamfara State knows, there is a peace dialogue between the leaders of Fulani, traditional rulers, including security personnel, including representative of the governor, that is the Commissioner for Special Duty, in Birnin Magaji. I have a reliable information that the security agency sat with the representative of the governor.
In that peace dialogue?
In the peace dialogue in Birnin Magaji.
Who initiated the peace dialogue?
The peace dialogue is between the military, as is the military, and the state government, and the locals there.
Okay, so the military representing the federal government, state government, and the locals.
Personnel are there, because what I'm trying to tell you, I have said it. You have to use two approach. Kinetic.
And non-kinetic.
A non-kinetic approach.
Okay, we'll take a moment. We'll go on a quick break. We'll come back and pick it up from this point here. Please stay with us.
Thank you.
Politicians make lofty campaign promises, but do they really fulfill them? Are you worried about the quality of governance? Do you know how to hold your public officers and politicians accountable? As a Nigerian, do you even know your rights? Many questions begging for answers, but don't you worry. We've got you covered. We bring you Democracy 101 in 5, your reliable and easy-to-digest guide on citizens' rights, government's responsibilities, rule of law, holding government accountable, and all things democracy. Democracy is more than elections. The real essence of democracy is what plays out after the elections. Democracy is about making government work for you. Watch Democracy 101 every weekday at 7:55 p.m. and Sundays at 8:55 p.m. on Channels Television. Democracy 101 in 5 is an initiative of Yaga Africa with support of the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, FCDO. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele is the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, set up by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Prior to this, he was the fiscal policy partner and Africa tax leader at PwC, where he worked for 22 years, gaining in-depth knowledge and diverse experience ranging from tax advisory and policy advocacy to business strategy consulting. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele will be speaking at the platform on making Nigeria the springboard for the Africa we want through sound economic policies and responsible citizenship. Date is Monday, 2nd of October 2023. Time 9 a.m. Venue is the Covenant Place, Igomo, right beside the National Theatre. See you there. This event will be broadcast live on Channels Television. The platform is powered by the Covenant Nation.
Southwood. Fine furnishings for your home and office. Southwood is a Nigerian company dedicated to improving the quality of workplaces and homes. Our space planning and craftsmanship allows you to create a highly customized and comfortable office environment for hardworking and busy executives. Southwood solutions are perfect for today's flexible work cultures. Teamwork, transparency, collaboration. A well-designed and comfortable work environment is proven to increase productivity and morale. Our elegant home furnishings provide the ultimate in comfort and quality. Southwood, furnishings that shape your world. Visit us today at southwoodnigeria.com. Email us at furniture@southwoodnigeria.com or call 0700 Furniture.
On October the 1st, 2023, Nigeria will be over 23,000 days, 756 months, 63 years as a sovereign nation. Watch Channels Television as it brings you Independence Day special with the theme Empowering Tomorrow, a New Vision for Nigeria, with seasoned analysts, erudite scholars, and policymakers to blaze a new trail.
Vision for the economy, not about the 10 or 4 years, but a vision that talks about what you want to make of this economy in the next 10 years, which means you must look beyond your own time in the office.
If we're weighing down the military on all sorts of internal issues that we're having, who is going to solve this issue? We need to start empowering all the other civil policing agencies we have.
Join us on Sunday, October the 1st, 2023, 7 to 9 a.m. to dissect the president's speech. Then Sunday Politics, 7 to 9 p.m. On Monday, we return with a bang between 5 to 9 p.m. for a town hall, only on Channels Television, a network built on trust.
Channels Television wishes you a happy Eid al-Maulud.
Welcome back. We still have Sani Abdullahi Shinkafi, former chairman, Committee on Prosecution of Armed Banditry and Related Offences, here with us. Thank you for staying with us. Before we went on that break, you were talking about kinetic and non-kinetic approach to ending terrorism, banditry and terrorism basically across the country. Now, we do know that this is not something that just started. It's almost a decade since this matter reared its ugly head. The question then will be, why is it seeming impossible to end banditry?
Well, it is not impossible to end the banditry, but because of there are some contributing factors which make it very difficult and banditry within the shortest period of time. There is root causes of banditry, unless there's going to be a remedy on those root factors. That is lack of proper laws and legislation to prosecute these armed banditry-related offenses, which involve higher level of corruption on the part of security agencies, higher level of corruption on the part of the judiciary, there is a lack of proper border control. That is, population of smaller and lighter arms are being smuggled in the land border. And Zamfara State share boundary with the Niger Republic. In my local government where I come from, you can't spend 1.5 hours without entering Niger Republic. In Zulumi local government, you can't spend 20 to 30 minutes or 10 minutes. You just cross the border, Niger border. So there should be a proper check and balances on this border control. Immigration are not doing the needful, what they're supposed to do to stop illegal immigration of these aliens, foreign national, who smuggle smaller and lighter arms into Nigeria through the land border. Customs are not doing their work, what they're supposed to do. So what I'm saying, the most dangerous part of this banditry in Zamfara, politicians are toying with the life of the ordinary citizens of Zamfara State by playing politics with banditry and insecurity, who get unrecognized or undue publicity. This is one of the stumbling blocks in finding lasting solution to this banditry. And also the issue of poverty, bad governance, kidnapping for ransom. If you look at it critically, these bandits, they are not promoting any ideology like ISWAP, ISIS, Boko Haram, and Ansar-ud-Din. So this banditry is a criminal economic driving enterprise where you see in any society there is good and bad and ugly. So even in the military force, there is bad eggs who are aiding and abetting armed banditry. It's on record, on the line. In my community, 3 army personnel were arrested for selling arms and ammunition and military kits to these armed bandits. Yet, nobody knows the outcome of that investigation on the part of the military. And also on the part of the military again, there is also another military personnel arrested, given a very important security intelligence report, bandit. Whenever the Air Force want to attack the camp of the bandit, that military officer will have an information and he will relate to them and they will dodge from their head out. Yet, that report was not made public and nobody knows what is going on. So the problem like this adoption of the students of the Perry University of Gusau, from my own personal opinion, I blame the governor because there is a security intelligence report which the DSS gave to the state government and action agencies. That the bandits have planned to attack educational institutions and the schools in Zamfara State. Yet, what has been done?
No, hold on.
I blame the manager of the university and the action agency.
You know, you said something here that my colleagues in Lagos have questions for you, but just weighing on this one, you just said here now that there's a security report from the DSS given to the governor.
Yes, and the action agencies.
But earlier you said also that it is not, the governor cannot, in your words, cannot deploy the security agencies or the military. You said so.
Yes.
So if the report is
there's a synergy between the state government and the federal government, even including local government, in the fight against this terrorism and insecurity in the land.
So the state governor who owns the house gets this report and takes it to the federal government, say, see what's happening, and no action is done, and then you now say that the state government, you said earlier that he's politicizing the whole situation. Is that what you said earlier?
Yes, because he visited the National Security Advisor on how to curtail the issue of insecurity.
Okay.
And as I have said earlier, the deployment of this security lies with the federal government.
Okay.
And on this note, he has no constitutional right whatsoever to say that he's going to use full kinetic approach to end this banditry. He doesn't have some power because this military cannot take order from him.
Okay, let's take this to my colleagues in Lagos. We'll come back here. Aya Buki.
Yes, thank you, Nyota. Mr. Shinkafi, I'm wondering if we missed out on whether or not you told about the details of this report by the DSS to the state governor. But before we explore that, let's touch on the negotiation that you talk about, that you said happened between the military, the state government, and the locals. I believe you said in Birnin Magaji. If not, you can clarify that. If this indeed happened, then why the disagreement between the federal government and the Zamfara state government over ongoing negotiations with bandits, with the defense minister clarifying, saying that we are not in any negotiation with bandits in Zamfara state, but the state government is insisting that the federal government is engaging in negotiations with bandits in Zamfara state without carrying it along. So where did the disagreement arise from? If you're telling us categorically that there is a representative of the state government in that negotiation.
Well, it is very unfortunate that politicians are trying to play politics with the lives and property of the citizens in Zamfara state. It is on record. Anybody is at liberty to find the details from the secret police or from the military. When the peace dialogue was initiated in Birnin Magaji, representatives of security personnel were there. Representative of the Plani, that is Alaji Shinge, and other Fulani leaders, including traditional rulers, including the Commissioner for Special Duty, the governor, was there. Can any commissioner go and attend such sensitive meetings without the governor giving him an authority to represent him or to represent the state governor? So clearly the Commissioner for Special Duties is holding brief for his principal, that is the governor. So the issue of the report we are talking about, the State Security Service made available report to the governor and the action agencies. There is some notorious armed bandit kingpins who have made it publicly that they are going to attack some educational institution in Zamfara state. Yet, the state government, the action agencies, and the management of the University of Gusau refused to take a proactive measures in curtailing the adoption or the occurrences of kidnapping of these students. So this is a serious threat to the life and property of people of Zamfara state. If the state government and federal government are accusing or counter-accusation. So the most important thing is to safeguard the life and property of the good people of Zamfara state. Enough is enough. The people of Zamfara state are tired of this banditry. The socio-economic development in Zamfara State is in stagnation level. Nothing is going there. There's a lot of people millions of people who are displaced. People cannot go to their farmlands. All economic activity in Zamfara State is grounded.
But Mr. Shinkafi,
people are living in depression, in anxiety, in starvation, in hunger, in disease.
Mr. Shinkafi, why do you think the state government is feigning ignorance of this ongoing negotiation if its own representative is in that negotiation with the federal government and bandits in Zamfara State?
What I have said earlier, that the civic responsibility of any responsible government is to serve people and also to provide security. If the federal government is doing all effort to tackle this issue of insecurity through kinetic and non-kinetic approach, that is by deploying full military force to fight this banditry, they can also take a second leg of non-kinetic approach. So the state government should be appreciative, and the governor also visited the Office of National Security Advisor with his counterpart governor from Niger State, because we share boundary with Niger State from Ansado axis, and with the Senate Committee Chairman on Security and Intelligence. So for him to prove that he's ignorant of what is happening in Zamfara State, I think he's not appreciative with what the government is trying to tackle the issue of insecurity in Zamfara State.
Well, Mr. Shinkafi, if I can quickly allow me to... Just 1 second, Mr. Shinkafi, if you don't mind me butting in very quickly, because, you know, it's unfortunately, well, it just so happens that, you know, quite a number of governors in Zamfara State Zamfara State has a history of negotiating with bandits over the years with some previous governors, Governor Yerima, Governor Atwali, and the rest of them. And a good number of them are still recommending that to the federal government now. But that's not even where I'm going. In all of the conversations you've had of that, one very important thing you said was that the DSS has information that these things happening now were going to happen, and you've said that nothing was done about it. Is there a role that the locals could have played? This is not in any way, manner, shape, or form absolving government, federal, or state of their responsibilities. But is there a role for the locals? Because all insecurity is local. So is there a role that the communities themselves where these things happen could have played? I mean, the local government authorities and all, to ensure that these things don't even get as bad as it became, that it's lasted for this long?
Most of this banditry, kidnapping, cattle rustling, and displacement of people from their ancestral homes mostly are in the remote area and the rural area, where the terrain is very difficult for the security personnel to launch an attack because of lack of modern equipment to fight this banditry. The locals can play a very, very good role in the curtailing this issue of insecurity by providing meaningful information or security intelligence to the action agencies and the secret police. But the problem, most of these locals also, because this banditry started for a decade, most of this banditry, some locals also were beneficiary of this banditry.
All right.
Because of informants, some unpatriotic traditional rulers are aiding and abetting this banditry.
Okay. Mr. Shinkafi, we really have to go. But you said in that meeting you said with the locals and all of that and security and all, you mentioned that the commissioner for special duties in Zamfara was in that meeting.
Yes.
What's the name of that commissioner?
The commissioner for special duties is Nasiru Zurmi.
Because I have information here that they do not have any commissioner for special duties in Zamfara.
If they don't have, they have commissioner for intergovernmental affairs, which is attached to the office of the governor.
Okay, all right.
Even if they don't have commissioner for special duty, didn't they have Nasir Zulmi in their state executive council?
All right. Mr. Sani Abdullah Shinkafi is the former chairman committee on the prosecution of armed banditry and related offenses in Zamfara State. Thank you for coming out to.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now let's look a bit at what your comments are. We have this first one from Mohammed Gire, and it says, here we are again. The new CBN governor shouldn't have classified his interventions into short, medium, and long term. To me, when dealing with the long-term issues, they already tackled, short and medium-term challenges re-emerge. Sadly, that's our system. We need a state of emergency-like approach. That's coming from Mohammed Gire.
Well, we hope that is considered. This one is coming from Professor Imonoka Inakina, and he says, the new CBN governor has preferred solutions to immediately fix the economy with his short-term solutions to deal with the monies owed and making everything transparent to all Nigerians to help bring the exchange rate down. Impressive, and Nigerians are hopeful. Sorry, that's from Honorable Ademola Alaladi.
Good. And now the one from, excuse me, Professor Nakena. Says in pursuance of veritable government policies as predictable, this government's economic team and CBN must start by curtailing the pervasive economic inequality and endemic institutional corruption, which is pernicious to our development. Government must also redeploy the resources made from the removal of fuel subsidy in intervening in the critical sectors that will impact on the daily lives of Nigerians, especially those below poverty line, who are expected to experience the impact of governance, economic reforms, and growth in the short and medium term. And Professor Inakena's comments brings us to an end of Sunrise Daily this morning. Thank you for the privilege of being a part of your day and public holiday at that. I am Akine. Have a great day.
Indeed, ensure you make the best of the public holiday by resting. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
And while you rest, don't rest on your oars. You can do better than you did yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Above all, let's all work together to make our nation as what we want it to be. God bless you. I'm Neo Tagwe, and goodbye.
Top of the morning and welcome to our special coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Olumide Macaulay. The headlines. Russia blames US for Nord Stream destruction, citing emerging evidence. Russia hits
Yeah.